let me ask you, when I met you, you were the chief nester at Nest DC. Now you are the chief flockster at Flock DC. What what does that mean?
Yeah, we like to keep it interesting with the job titles and branding. So we're squarely in the real estate management space, but that sounds boring. So we like to focus on branding and language that keeps it interesting and is kind of intriguing. So I started Nest DC in 2008 at the height of the Great Recession, and I'd come out of a nice long career in nonprofit management and focus on healthcare and environmental issues, but had always really had a strong interest in working with my hands and housing in particular. I grew up in a particularly housing insecure environment growing up, and had always really kind of had an eye toward what it would mean to provide a great living experience for not only for myself, but for other people. And so I decided to make a pretty significant transition into the property management world. Property management is sort of a 4-letter word. And because of that, I was pretty interested in kind of creating a branding and an image around what we were doing that was really a counterpoint to how people perceived management in their other experiences. And so Nest was born with the idea that we deliver a really great and exceptional living experience to residents, that the folks for whom we're managing their property, those investors, had a good experience, and that we were having a really strong impact on community. And being really focused on delivering an exceptionally high quality client experience. And that is not necessarily a traditional path in the industry. And so we found very quickly that our concept was intriguing and definitely had some opportunity for us to create some market share and make an impact in the industry. And so, we grew one property at a time very organically. We were very laser focused on the idea that we wanted to provide an exceptional experience. We wanted people to be happy where they live. When people are happy where they live, they make great neighbors. When you have great neighbors, you have great neighborhoods. When you have great neighborhoods, you have stronger and more robust economies. And that's a good thing for everybody. And so that value system, being a purpose-driven company from the start, I think set us apart, and also just gave us a lot of room to start thinking about, what more were we able to do with what we thought was a really dynamic and interesting business model. And so, 4 years into the journey, or the flight, as I might call it, you're going to hear a lot of bird puns. I can't help it. So 4 years in, I was able to quit my other full-time job because we'd hit a moment of sustainability as a company, and we had enough properties under management that I was going to be able to draw a salary for the first time, rather than just sort of staffing up. And in that moment, I felt this sort of enormous sense of relief that I was, going to be part of a company that would provide some security and safety for both me and my family going forward. But I also felt not great about enjoying that success on my own. And so I thought a lot about how we got to where we were at that moment in time. And it wasn't me exclusively, it was a team effort. And the staff that I had pulled together, and the staff that was truly bought into what we were trying to do, was really very much responsible for our success. And so I wanted to create a business ownership opportunity for them, but it didn't make sense at that point to really split Nest up. And so what we wound up doing was creating an entirely new business unit called Roost DC. And Roost manages condo associations and cooperatives in the city with a focus on urban high density living, which had been really our specialty that we carved out. And so Roost became the first and what I believe is the only employee owned property management company in the country. And we have 18 employee owners of that business unit. And it is kind of a parallel company, sister company, if you will, to Nest DC, and has been very successful over the years. And then that worked out really well, and was a big win. And then we thought, well, what if we started an in-house maintenance and repair service? And obviously that needed to have a bird as well. So then we launched Starling DC, which is a starling on a hammer. And then, I realized that there were just kind of an infinite number of birds I could throw out, and that we were starting to confuse folks around what bird did what. And so Flock became the mother bird and the family of companies that were, we sort of organized our work under an umbrella of Flock DC, which is, the tagline is, a number of birds of one kind. And it created an opportunity for us to explore new ideas and concepts without sort of watering down the heart of what we do as a company. Long answer.
Where did this love of birds come from?
It's funny. My grandmother turned 100 day before yesterday. And we weren't sure she was going to make it, and she really rallied for half of that day, long enough for me to be able to have a conversation with her. And she hasn't been able to have a conversation in quite a long time. And right now I'm at this space that our company has that we use as a retreat space, and it's in a sort of a bird sanctuary. And growing up, my grandmother was a watercolor artist and quite well known, and didn't start painting until she was in her 40s. And so she was always this hero, someone who raised a family and sort of ran a farm, took my brother and I in during hard times growing up, and being around her and sort of the seeing magic through her eyes of just sort of birds and really kind of being a steward of the environment, made a strong impression on me in general. And I've always just had a soft spot for birds. And in that very conversation I had with her, I'm having that conversation with her, and a bald eagle just flew right by. And there's just sort of, in any significant moment, I can kind of rely on some bird to show up and just give me a sense of the world being a bigger, brighter place. And so that's partly where the bird theme came from.
What a great story. And happy birthday to your grandmother.
Thank you.
That's exciting.
She's awesome.
So now that we've talked about your title of Chief Flockster, how are you? How are you health-wise? You're in your retreat up in Anne Arundel County. How are you doing? How's your team doing? How did you weather the pandemic?
Thank you for asking. It has been, we are okay. And I offer that answer thoughtfully. We are okay. We are having the hardest year of our lives professionally, in terms of the business and our ability to weather this time. So business is okay. We're paying our bills, and we are, making it through a changing environment in terms of how our business unfolds, and will continue to be okay. I think the other answer to that question is we are doing our very best work right now. And I have never been more proud of the work that we're doing. And so business as sort of a function of, are we profitable and able to pay the bills and keep employees engaged, and all of that is okay. Are we doing work that I believe moves the needle and makes an incredible difference in the community? I think the answer is absolutely. We've never been better. And it's hard to reconcile those two things, because you have to sort of shift between, oh gosh, the business is hard to do right now. There are the downside to supply chains being restricted, to our resident pool. People are truly on the verge. My staff has been, and many of my team members have just been hitting a wall, I think personally, professionally, because the volume of work is harder. It's harder to satisfy client needs. It's harder to get the work done. Vendors are getting sick. It's just been an environment in which the work seems almost impossible to deliver. And yet we continue to do that, and still find a way to carve out a path for us to be a good citizen as a company, and to do meaningful work at the same time. And I think that's been a true gift for us. And we've certainly done everything we can to meet the moment. And I'm proud of that work. But also, personally, I think like all of us, this has been a tricky year, and a painful one. But it's been my intention to say, how do I be the best possible person during this time? And look back and say, I'm glad I took that time to do the right thing. And I think we're in the middle of doing that.
So what happened when the pandemic hit? What changes did you make? It was just about a year ago that everybody shut down. So
Yeah.
how did it affect you?
It's tricky to manage property that you can't safely visit, and to take a team that was very much integrated physically with each other. I mean, the team sport aspect of what we do is truly pronounced. And so for us to go from really being in a kind of a group offices where we're all together all the time to, checking in with each other via screen, I think we were able to do that quickly. We had invested in a lot of streamlined technologies and tools for our business that made the transition, to be honest, a very simple one. But managing culture and expectations during that time, I think what we needed to do more than anything else, aside from just figuring out how to operationalize things in a pandemic and remotely, what we needed to do was commit to and be consistent with communicating meaningfully, authentically, transparently with our staff every single day about where we were as a company and what they could count on as employees. And so, in really very early March, I committed to my team, our team, you'll hear from us every day by 5 o'clock. And we will let you know where things stand for the company, just in terms of income. Were people going to be moving and coming and going from the city? That's our bread and butter. So we didn't know what the economic outlook would be for our company. And there was a heavy reliance on those updates for people to just feel like they had some idea of what was coming next. And it's interesting, we stuck with those updates every day truly for months with this is where we are with PPP. This is where we are in terms of income. This is how we've reduced and frozen all spending. And this is what we're going to do to ensure that you all can feel okay in your jobs. I cut my salary by 75%. We cut spending 40%. I mean, we made drastic changes very quickly. And I think that those gestures meant a lot to our team members. I think they meant a lot, to a lot of our client base. And I look back on that time with a lot of pride and zero regret. We did have to furlough staff. That was painful, but we found a way to do so in such a way that they weren't impacted financially. And we were able to bring them back in a way that they weren't hurting as employees and as sort of folks operating in the world. We wanted to make sure that people had as much continuity as possible in their lives. And I reflected back and thought about a time when I had a team member I was checking in with, and it was just I was in constant conversation, checking in on how people were doing emotionally and, professionally and otherwise. And I had one of my directors said, I don't know what I would do without the daily updates, because, when you send those updates and you just say everything is going to be okay, I just realized, okay, we're going to be okay. And I was like, I've never said everything's going to be okay, not once. And he was like, oh yeah, that's true. But it just does make me feel like it's going to be okay if I hear from you every day. And that meant a lot, I think, in that moment, just knowing that they were going to have some consistent touch point and something that felt reliable in the most unreliable time in our lives, I think, was something that we could do to positively impact people when nothing seemed positive in the moment.
That's a great lesson for people when you're in a state of crisis, upheaval, uncertainty. Just having a reassuring voice makes a huge difference. I remember it's a long time ago, but during the sniper shootings, people would tell me that, I didn't really have a lot to tell them, but they said whenever they saw me or heard me, they just felt calmer and safer, that somebody was looking out for them. And it makes a big difference for people. So,
yeah.
So how you've had a challenging year business-wise, but you said you're performing your mission or achieving your mission better than ever. How is that possible? How are you doing that?
We were able to think about what our role as a community-oriented business was during this time. And, we all know that there have been dueling pandemics right now. And it's not just about COVID and health, it's about racial equity and justice. And, we spent a lot of time and continue to do so as a company to study what our impact is in that space, what our responsibilities are to be an anti-racist company, what our role is in modeling a new way of doing business as an anti-racist company, particularly as part of an industry that has a very, very negative relationship with racial justice, and in fact has played a pretty deliberate and intentional role in keeping Black and brown folks in particular from owning homes. And it's hard for me to say, oh, this is great, there's so much opportunity in this industry that's like fully excluded people of color. Like, that doesn't work for me. And so we again thought, how do we meet this moment? How do we be really present in this conversation and in this take the opportunity to really invest in our values as a company and in the future that we want to be part of. And so, there were different points at which I think we just did a really good job of saying, these moments, I think that anybody that has a downtown business and a downtown storefront asking questions about what is our play in terms of the protests. Are we going to board our building up, and not only our own buildings, but the buildings that we manage on behalf of others? And we convened our staff and asked questions and had I think, really candid conversations and open conversations about how we wanted to approach those moments where we felt more vulnerable as a company, in some ways that were very good, and some ways that were really hard. And so we chose to open our doors up to the people protesting and say, come inside, use our restroom. We'll make it COVID friendly. We're here to support you. We want to be a sort of a respite, resting space for folks that are fighting this good fight. And we were able to engage our team members in, hosting and volunteering during that time, and really being sort of a central hub for folks during that summer of gathering. Felt just really empowering, I think, not only for me to be able to know that we could make those spaces available, but I think for our team members to feel like there's something they could actively do. Felt great. And we happen to be, one of our buildings is at 14th and U Street Northwest, it's at 15th and U, so just a block from 14th and U, where most people were gathering and being able to not hide, but to actually show up during this time felt great. And to see my staff really get highly engaged and really connected to the work just felt great, I think. And for us to be coming out, not just as with statements, but action around how we want to be a company that advances justice, was a really big turning point for us as a company that I think had always been really motivated and invested in doing the right thing for the community. But we needed to do more, and took this time. We have taken this time to really focus on doing as much as possible. And I think I couldn't be prouder of that work right now.
You had a great piece in the Washington Post about housing justice as a basic human right, and talking about many of the problems in your industry of excluding people of color. And you sort of ended, we're going to change the patterns that have created this. What does that mean? What do you have in mind for that?
It's one thing to say we're not comfortable with this sort of history of discrimination in our industry, and then it's another thing to say, what do we do about it, and how do we invest in that future? And so, the article, the op-ed that I drafted was really the focus of that was to say, listen, this is by design. This didn't just happen. This was planned for. And so if we want to move beyond this, we have to plan our way out as well. It's not going to just happen. It has to be highly intentional, and we have to really focus eyes wide open on what the solutions are going to be, and what is keeping people from buying homes. And it's not just money, it's discrimination, it's predatory lending. The list goes on and on. But what can we as a little sort of lifestyle property management company do to change the conversation and invest in the future that we want to be part of? And so we studied what it would look like for us to make a more meaningful contribution to a housing justice space. And so we were not only started to talk about housing justice as it relates to the past and how we need to focus on a new and better future, but what can we do? And so in early September, right around when Justice Ginsburg passed away, and we have a large format mural on the side of one of our buildings of Justice Ginsburg, which became just this gathering place for people mourning. And I think, if any liberal among us didn't use that moment to ask questions about how they can be the change that we want to see, then they weren't paying attention to their own value system, right? So we studied pretty deeply what that next step looked like for us. And so, we decided to launch a housing justice fund, and carve out some dollars, and not an insignificant amount of money, not enough, but some cash that we could dedicate toward helping people who are Black and Brown buy homes with down payment grants. And like all things, I thought that sounded really simple. We should just do it real quick. How hard can it be? And it's been really hard. Logistically, it's been very easy from a values perspective and from like a mission perspective, but like logistically, to operationalize that effort has been a pretty massive lift. But we launched Birdseed, which is a housing justice fund, and a reparative effort to say, we believe people have been excluded from the home buying journey, and we are not okay with that. And so we are going to start investing some of our dollars in trying to bridge those intentionally created gaps in opportunity. And so yesterday, actually, we got to inform our first 4 housing justice grant recipients that they got $10,000 each toward buying homes in this area. And we'll continue to do that work. It's been just an incredible opportunity for us to be able to do that.
So it's called the Birdseed Foundation.
Yeah, the Birdseed
And
Fund.
you're actually at the point where you're giving money away now.
Yep.
And it's not just the district, it's the region people can
It's the
apply
region.
from?
Yeah. The reality is Washington, D.C. proper is so expensive. And the region itself is also expensive, but we wanted to be, sensitive to the fact that like it's hard to buy a home in the district. So yeah, we picked four exceptional applicants. We had 40 plus applicants in our first round. And we earmarked $215,000. And by earmarked, I think much of that came from my personal savings, and my wife's eyes got really big when I mentioned that we were going to be doing this, but also like total support, because it's just simply the right thing to do. It just is the right thing to do. And and this is a pretty competitive industry, so it's not only the right thing to do, but listen, if other people feel like, oh, I should do that, or how come she got to do that? Great, like let's go ahead and appeal to people's competitive spirits and see what they can do to replicate programs like this. Because as it turned out, this is the only program of its kind in the country, and I thought there'd be lots of them. And when in fact there are none, where you can just give people cash money that is really no strings to buy a home, and a $10,000 award, but that's not a forgivable loan. That doesn't come with a lot of hoops and hurdles, where we just say, well, we're going to release these dollars at closing so you can have another sort of windfall that helps you buy a home. Like so many other people get windfalls from family and whatnot. This is what we wanted that fund to be about.
So how did the 40 applicants find out about it? What was the application process like? And how did you make the selection of 4?
Yeah. We have had a program called Birdseed for quite a while, and had been making micro grants to doers, makers, and disruptors across the city for quite a while. So we funded all kinds of really cool projects, including, murals and buying tractors for veteran farmers, and we helped an organization that hosts birthday parties for homeless kids. And so we've been doing a lot of grant making at a much smaller scale earlier in our first initial iteration of Birdseed as part of our philanthropic community-based work. The housing justice piece was added on and really became kind of the centerpiece for that work. But in its inception, and because I come from that nonprofit background, it was pretty clear that I didn't want to create a lot of burden for the applicant, and I didn't want to create a lot of burden for us, because at the end of the day, we kind of have to keep running our company and be successful as a company, or we can't pull these things off. The application process is a holdover from that initial sort of Birdseed work that we do and continue to do. And it's a 1-page application and it can't be longer. Just 1 page, that's plenty. And there are about 7 questions that people have to answer. And those 7 questions shouldn't require any research. They should be, top of mind answers. And then an essay that we ask folks to write. And then we decided, it's tricky when you're asking people to evaluate applications around who should deserve funds to help them buy a home. I mean, obviously everyone's qualified. So we had to convene to study, like, how do you measure one applicant over another? We did a partnership with the Washington Area Community Foundation. Tonya Wellens was in my class. That was such a great clutch relationship that I could draw from. There's no way we would be able to pull this off without that partnership. They did a really nice job of helping guide us through the process. And then we built an advisory board that has been, very, very deeply engaged in the work and how we're looking at our evaluation process to be both equitable and fair and thoughtful. And so that group has been, they followed up with in-person interviews with all of our applicants. And we came up with a rubric and tool that did a nice job of finding ways to score applicants. And again, we knew that from the beginning, we were going to have folks that were truly qualified. Everyone's qualified and in need of the funds, but what we decided to focus in on was looking at impact. So we knew that the funds would have greater impact for some applicants than others. And we were able to sort of, I think, hone in on what that impact analysis would look like. We went through all of our applicants, and there were 4 whose scores were particularly high compared to the larger pool. And so it made that, honing in on the 4 easier. We met to review those applicants and decided to just sort of split the $40,000 that we had to give. We'd planned on giving $30,000 in the first round. Our total commitment as a family and as a company was $215,000. The idea was to start our first round of grants with a $30,000 initial pool, but we had an out of the blue donor who gave us $10,000. And so we immediately increased it for this first round to show people that if you give us money for this program, it will directly impact people like tomorrow or as quickly as possible. So we did 40, each applicant that was awarded the grant got $10,000, and we made those phone calls yesterday. We had the advisory committee called and said, we just have one more administrative task. And then we got them on Zoom and announced to them that they'd be getting those funds. And I wasn't part of the calls because I actually had work, but I got to see them afterward, and wow, that if you want to cry tears of joy, it's a pretty good listen.
Well, I hope they took a lot of screenshots of those calls.
Yeah. We have the recording, and so we'll make some videos, and we're really good at sort of marketing and outreach. And you asked, how do people learn? We did a lot of outreach. We took out ads. We hired a PR company, which was a big lift financially for us as well. But we knew the more visibility we got for the program, the more likely it would be that other organizations would be interested in replicating this work. And that's what we're after, is not what we can do with our 215, but a lot more interested in saying, how do we inspire other people to take on this exact same kind of work, and to make reparative contributions to the world we want to be part of, instead of just hoping someone else gets to it. This is a program that we're very eager and interested in helping people replicate. They can use all of the coding on our website, which we custom designed. I have this incredibly smart and engaged web designer, and he and I worked to build the site. And we are happy to have people use what we've built and replicate that. And so it was worth it for us to do as much aggressive outreach as possible. We did a lot of, we have a pretty robust newsletter list. We promoted on different blogs. We did presentations to organizations that have like first-time home buying clubs and things of that nature. And we got some really good reach. I'm the board chair for Whitman Walker Health. And I think I felt sort of awkward about pushing out to all of my fellow board members something that wasn't related to Whitman Walker. And I was like, listen, I'm going to take my Whitman Walker Health hat off and tell you about this birdseed program I have. I got a couple of, this sounds great. I'm going to share with my network. And it was awesome, because yesterday, one of my fellow board members said, wow, somebody I forwarded it to was actually the winner. And so it was neat to see how folks got to us, and that there isn't any promotion that's not worth the time or energy. And we really worked hard to make sure people heard about the program.
So is this an annual grant award? I mean, when's the next round of grants?
It's open now. So people are able to apply on a rolling basis, and each quarter we'll make a selection. So if people want to
Each quarter, okay.
Quarter. So the intention is to be aggressive about our giving, to give as much as early and as often as we can, and to hope that people come in with additional funds and resources for us to sort of keep the party going. We've raised $30,000 so far to add to our pool. I have to share, and I've done a lot of fundraising in life. I haven't asked anybody to give. So, and minus the soft ask, like if you're interested in contributing, you can go here. But I mean, aside from the donate button, we haven't done like a big push. I think we're in part waiting for the stories that we want to tell. And we've had people kind of out of the blue contribute $30,000 to this effort. So if we're kind of banking on $30,000 to $40,000 rounds, now we have another quarter where we can sort of keep things moving.
So if people are interested in contributing, where do they go?
They can go to the Birdseed website, and there's
which is
birdseedfoundation.com.
There we go.
And there's a big donate button there. It's my favorite button. And so you can go there and you can make a credit card contribution. You can, we've had some folks that have used, they have sort of donor directed funds through different organizations that they've been able to transfer more substantial dollars into that fund. And
is this under the
100% of the costs of operating the foundation? So there's 100% of every dollar contributed at this point will go toward a down payment grant.
So you had, as you mentioned at the beginning, you had sort of a varied career and then sort of came into the housing industry. What housing justice seems to be your life's calling? What drew you to that? Why are you doing this?
I lived in a really unstable kind of space growing up. So we moved, I think, 28 different times by the time I got through my senior year of high school. And I went to 3 of those. So, I didn't have the stability that I think every kid really deserves, and every family should try and provide their kids. And there were some understandable reasons for the amount of movement that I had in my life and instability that I had in my life. And then there were some that just, weren't particularly understandable. And growing up sort of unclear where I would be from year to year or quarter to quarter, um, I didn't want anyone else to feel that way. And I realized that, and I was just sort of born with a pretty entrepreneurial spirit, always looking for a side hustle as a kid. I had a vacuum cleaning business. I had dusting businesses. I would go pull sort of things out of some junkyard and try and sell them I always had some strategy for making cash. And knew that there was some way to create an intersection between doing good work and having a good business. And so that was, I thought, wow, if you can solve one problem or a series of problems or make a contribution or move that needle with your business. And that's kind of it's sort of the perfect, it's the perfect opportunity to make a difference in the world. And so I decided to use my instincts around business to really advance the kind of change in the world that I believe in, and hope that if I can create an opportunity for some of our applicants to have stability for their kids, that's totally worth it. That's where I should be investing my time and money.
But your philosophy really, as you said earlier, is sort of, let's take one at a time, make sure we're doing a great job here before we move to the next thing. And I was struck by your definition of neighborhood. You got one good neighbor, that helps lead to a good neighborhood, it leads to a good community, it leads to a good city. And I really, I've spent my whole life trying to make people happy where they live and work. I'm a community builder. So I firmly believe in that philosophy. It's amazing how one bad house on a block can ruin blocks around, not just that block, but blocks around. It's just awful how that happens. So,
yeah.
So what are the things you look for in a neighborhood? To me, it was a grocery store. A good grocery store is critical, I think, to a thriving neighborhood. And frankly, a good high school to me is critical as well. When I would go visit other towns, I wouldn't do the sightseeing stuff. I would follow their trash trucks. I would follow their street cleaners, look at their parks, look at their sidewalks, things like that, just to see how they took care of the little things. Because and I would visit grocery stores. To me, that's a critical piece of it. So beyond the housing, are you involved in other things to help with the neighborhood?
We're certainly invested in trying to collaborate with organizations that are working in this space. And, you have to have affordable housing in order to have neighborhoods that are inclusive, and you have to have infrastructure paired with that affordable housing, and things like grocery stores, access to transportation, access to high quality education. Again, by design, many of those things have been excluded from communities that have become now neighborhoods that are more or less set aside for Black and Brown families. And so part of what we're looking at in making these grants and in understanding how we're investing in dollars that have the greatest impact is in saying, is buying a home going to give you more access to a better education for your family, to better infrastructure? Is it going to allow you to be closer to work? And then partnering with other organizations that can help sort of fill out the balance of that conversation, or are working on parallel issues, like making sure that there are adequate resources in communities. And then so we're not just sort of moving more people out of the city, but giving them access to the resources that do make the fabric of our cities more viable and inclusive. And then at the end of the day, we have to focus on where we know we can have that great impact. Because we're not a nonprofit. And so we have to kind of keep our business alive and well, which sometimes feels like a tall order during COVID. So, it's about being available for as many conversations as possible, and trying to be part of that larger conversation about what you just described, which is like, we can't have neighborhoods that aren't thriving. It doesn't work for anybody.
Here's one thing you do you've at least done it twice, and that's public art. Mm-hmm. And I'm a huge believer in art in public places. I'm a huge believer in art as a way to help spur economic development, artistic centers. So talk to us about the artwork that you've sponsored in the city.
Oh, thanks. Absolutely. So
that's a big, Lisa, that's a big deal. Public art is huge in terms of lifting a community, lifting morale,
Yeah.
getting people sort of talking about where they are.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm a big art fan. Both I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation that my grandmother's a watercolor artist. And my mom was also a ceramicist and printmaker, and so I've just always had, you know, strong interest in art. And you know, we got a small contract to work for this building on 13th Street in Petworth, and the city has done a nice job, I think, of with their murals project, and one of the particular building had been set aside their wall for one of the murals projects, and they were paired with James Ballou, who is you know, now a very internationally recognized large scale, large format muralist who has murals all over the world. And that particular mural on 13th Street has an image of two Black boys, and they're talking to each other with a tin can and a string. And every time I passed by that building, that mural just took my breath away. I could never stop thinking about it. It just really impacted me. And so when we were able to, we were operating out of a space on Georgia Avenue, and we had gotten into a fight with the landlord. And I mentioned this in our sort of pre-conversation, but I don't believe in renting because I just, I don't like being subject to having to move and like all sort of that baggage from being a kiddo and not having that security. I like owning. I like the certainty of owning and being sort of having more agency. So we decided, you know, we'd come up with a really strong banking partner who said, listen, I think you can buy something. And so we found a building on First and Florida Northwest in Bloomingdale that had been a liquor store. And we were able to totally gut renovate that building. And it's on a really visible corner that's very heavily trafficked. And I thought, gosh, this is just the perfect backdrop for some public art. And I would really like a piece of art that talks to the other piece of art up the street. And so I contacted James Ballou and I said, listen, I kind of want to turn your mural into a triptych. And so, you know, he's like, oh, I'm a couple years out. And then all of a sudden he called and said, I had a cancellation in DC. I can do your mural in 3 weeks. And so
wow,
we're just rushing to get this done, right? I'm trying to scrape some cash together. We live hand to mouth as a company. It doesn't sound
now
like what we
when
do.
he called you and said he could do it in 3 weeks, did an eagle fly by the window when you were on the call, or
No eagles flew by, but I knew I had to fly high real fast to get this
there
done.
you go.
And so we came up with the concept of having you know, someone on the front of the building. I wanted something black and white. Again, I really like portraiture. I really, again, wanted the murals on that corner to really talk to another part of town. And so there's a mural of a woman with a megaphone screaming into that megaphone. And most people don't know that there's another mural on the other side of our building that has a girl with her fingers in her ears. And it's about these neighborhoods talking to each other and whether they're sharing the same conversation. And so that mural on First and Florida is a conversation partner to its sort of original partner on 13th Street. And it was such a pleasure to be able to do that. And James is just enormously talented. He has a lot of projects across the city. And even though I was on the verge of getting arrested the whole time because DDOT was mad at me and I just, you know, I had a big scissor lift and I don't know, but we got it done. And I think it's been a big win for the city, and that mural has been, you know, it also takes my breath away, which is great. And so when we knew we would be expanding our offices and we were sort of growing out of our space, and we didn't intend to leave, but we had to expand. And so we bought offices at 15th and U Street, the same ones that I spoke about earlier, where we were able to open up our offices. And when I went to look at that building, I just looked at the wall and I thought, this is another perfect wall for public art. And I don't know why, but I instantly knew I wanted it to be Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I wanted her to be releasing a flock of birds. And that's exactly what I got. And so we worked with a local artist, Rose Jaffe. I was really invested in working with a woman for that project. And she did something that was, I think, really well done. Her idea around creating basically a mixed media mural. So instead of painting right on the building, what she did was she painted panels that she had installed so she could get a much more realistic impression of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's face and features. And so she painted those in her studio and then installed them, and then all of the robes and the birds are panels as well. So it's part installation and it's part mural. And the cool thing about it is that like it will survive anything that might happen to that building. And And so one of the things that we're interested in thinking about doing is donating that mural to the Smithsonian so that they can tend to it and it can stay with the collection of art that will honor Justice Ginsburg. It was the first mural of her. And like I said, a really incredible gathering place for people that were mourning her. And still people go every day. I mean, it was like a matter of days before we were on tours. And so I would walk by the office and I'd see people walk up and they're like, and this is the Ruth Bader. I was like, who are you? And they're like, oh, would you like to say a few words? We're doing our tour. And I'm like, it's only been up for like 2 days. So it's been such an honor to be able to make that contribution to the city.
But what happened at the mural when she passed?
I mean, literally everybody came. Everybody came to, and people left so many notes and letters and flowers and
But you showed up with a bunch of Post-it notes and other things to help them, right?
Yes, we did.
You anticipated this.
Yeah, we anticipated that it would be a gathering place for folks, and that they would want to, and an ongoing gathering place. So of course, people went to the Supreme Court, and that made perfect sense. But every day we have people that will visit her image, and there was a great, I was at the building before she died, and in the alley. And this family popped in. Their garage is back there, and he came out. He had his daughter, this gentleman, and his daughter was about 4 years old, and he said, "Is this your building?" And I said, "Yeah, it's our building." He said, "Did you put that mural up?" And I said, "Yeah, we did." And he's like, "Thank you so much. My daughter, her window looks out at the mural, and so every single morning she wakes up and she looks out the window and she says, 'Good morning, Justice Ginsburg.'" And I think, wow, that's so incredible, right? So she's growing up with this sort of ginormous image, and we intentionally created a mural that made Justice Ginsburg look larger than life, even though in stature in real life she's quite small. But she is ginormous in this mural for very intentionally so. And to have this little girl wake up every morning to this iconic, incredible trailblazer of a woman, it's awesome. So that's a total privilege to be able to do that. And we did want to make sure that we marked, and that little girl wrote her note. My son wrote a note. I'd like just to see how many people were able to engage that mural. And then we partnered with the Jewish Heritage Foundation to donate all of those notes and all of those things that were left behind, and to make sure that they were archived and part of her sort of papers.
Very nice. That's great, Lisa. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now I'm going to get back to business here, core business, because we have a question from Paola Moya. And do you have webinars, coffee chat opportunities for first-time home buyers, specifically from under-resourced communities, do's, don'ts, et cetera, for home buying?
We don't, and I'll tell you why, and it's because other folks do. And so what we've done, and actually today was the first day, we aggregated a lot of resources that will pair folks with those existing opportunities. So the Urban Institute offers that program. MANA offers that program. The ARC has a first-time home buyers club. So those resources actually are already in play, and we support those. We don't want to recreate something that already exists, and we want to be really laser focused on where we can make the greatest contribution. So we do ask all applicants, are there resources that you need in this journey, whether it be a referral or support and credit counseling and things like that. So if you're on the Birdseed website, you'll see that we have a resources tab. We're going to be adding to that continually, so folks can get paired with the things that they need to make sure that they can get the support they need. And we had an applicant that had a question about how to qualify for a mortgage if he didn't have proper visa status. And so, we worked on the back end to see if we could find basically a mentor who could walk them through what those options were. And so we'll do what we can to create access to whatever resources are needed, but we're intentionally not recreating those resources or offering them. In our other space, sort of in our day-to-day work, we do offer a lot of educational programming on home buying and maintenance and things like that for our client community, and then for the larger community. And that's sort of both an opportunity for us to just offer education and to just show up visibly and hope that people choose to do business with us, because we still have to be a successful business. And that has been one of the things that we've done, I think, well in 2020. One of those things where I'm like, great, like if we're going to fill this space with opportunities to engage engage people in ways that we've never engaged them before. And that's been something we've done. And I know I have someone on my team, Dane Denson, and Dane is really someone that would be a perfect target audience for a Birdseed grant. Actually, I mean, he's very successful. He's African American. He's a DC native. He's just a really fantastic person. And he and I had a lot of time to talk about this program and what it meant and why we wanted to do this work. And he's been heavily engaged in interviewing the applicants and going through this process. And one of the applicants has a pretty large family in the Wardies, and he's already searching for a house for her to buy. And he's wanting to put together maintenance workshops because, you know, he knows maintenance inside and out. And he's like, I want people to know that when they buy their homes, they're going to have to be prepared for how that maintenance unfolds. So he's already working on workshops to help people get those needs met. And so I'm pretty excited about that.
So what's next for you? What's your next big project?
Well, you know, we have a new business unit that we're launching. So we have another bird. So Bird Watch is our new product and program, and it's an owl with big eyes. I haven't seen an owl recently, but anyway, so the owl, this is a new business product that's going to help us figure out how to get through this tricky time, right? So we decided, how as a company, how am I as a person going to be the best citizen I can be right now, and to make the greatest impact? But I also need to think about, how do we create a company that's thriving so we can continue to do this work? We've seen the landscape change. We've seen our income drop, not insignificantly, and growth be challenged right now as a result. So we decided to introduce a new brand and a new product, which is basically a property management service for people that own and live in their homes. So the tagline is, we take the hassle out of home ownership. And you know, if you're missing those days of having a landlord you could call when the toilet broke, we will be taking that call. And so for a pretty modest monthly fee, you have access to our team. We'll manage your maintenance requests. We'll put you in a preventive maintenance program. You sort of get a laundry list of things that you can sign up for, from gutter cleaning to lawn mowing to HVAC repair and things like that. And you get an app. You can put in maintenance requests for, like, oh, the toilet broke, I don't have time to deal with that. You put a maintenance ticket in, and then we'll take care of that for you. It's again, it was a one-of-a-kind program. We don't see anyone else across the country that's been doing this work. And it's definitely gotten a lot of interest from our client base. You know, we're trying to build a company that works with people at every stage of life. So they may rent a unit with us when they're young and new to the city, when they're working with Nest, and then maybe they move to buy a condo, and they might be on their condo board, and maybe Roost manages that building, and then maybe they want to engage Birdwatch when they're not quite sure how to handle the maintenance on their own, and then later they might move into a home, and again they might move on and turn that rental or turn their old condo into a rental. So we basically want to be your housing partner from beginning to end, and be a strong, valuable partner for you as you focus on what's most important to you in life, and then we can make sort of the home management piece a lot easier. So hopefully Birdwatch will take off.
So is Birdwatch offered in Rockville?
Not at the moment, but there's hope.
Well, there's potential client right here. So,
Yeah.
So you wrote, I mentioned earlier, your great op-ed piece in the Post. So are you writing anything else? You writing other things to follow that?
You know, I joke that, you know, growing up mostly in Idaho, and going to really public schools that I was in and out of all, you know, moving all the time, they kind of kept waving me out of requirements like English or history or, you know, basic math. So I always say it's kind of a miracle that I can read, let alone write. And writing was not something I've ever really felt very confident in. And I've spent a lot of this year working on my writing and I think getting good at it and enjoying it quite a bit. So I'm actually working on a book. It's called Self-Elected. And it's really, it was really intended to be a business book. And it's less about how to do business, it's a lot more about why to do business. And this book is about why you can be in business to make the world a better place. And you can still enjoy the profits, but you can actually be really intentional about your purpose. And so this is something I think we've done well as a company over the last 12 years. I think we have a lot more work to do, but I want to share that journey with anybody that's interested in reading about it. And so the book should be finished in July. And then
Wow.
Debbie Kaplan already said she would read it, so I know I have one reader. I'm excited about that, but we'll do a push on that, and of course we'll talk about a bit about COVID in the book, but a lot more about things like Birdseed and how companies can truly move the needle in terms of being part of the world that we want to see, instead of waiting around for other people to make that change. I think there's a lot we can do as business owners to make a difference in the world.
Lisa, thank you very much for this. This has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. I really enjoy your insight in a lot of things, and enjoy your sense of making neighborhoods thrive. I mean, to me, that's a critical part of what we do. So let me ask you two last questions. One is, during the last year, any LGW members reach out to you? Have you reached out to them for any help or any guidance or any impact from them?
LGW has been just invaluable as I've been on this journey, and I can't I can't overstate that, right? It is if you look at the advisory committee and board members that I put together to help advance this work and play a big role in making sure that we're doing the right thing and giving these funds away, from the partnership with Tonya Wellens to having members of my own class be really deeply engaged in the Birdseed work, to just a lot of the networking that we've done to make sure people know what we're working on and why, has been huge. I mean, the community that LGW offers and those sort of built-in connections have been completely invaluable. And I think truly helped us get a lot farther, a lot faster. I mean, we had the idea for Birdseed in September. We made grants yesterday. I mean, we move fast, but we're
Wow.
going to move
Wow.
that fast unless you have the right people surrounding you. And LGW has delivered a great community of people that are as interested and invested in making changes as our company has been.
That's a great story, Lisa. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And now the last thing, I'm just going to give you the final word.
The final word. Thank you for having me on this call and for giving me a chance to talk about this work. I do hope that what we're doing right now offers some opportunity for other folks to try and think about how they're going to make their own impact around them. And it's not hard to do. And I think if there's any community that's going to pull that off, it's the LGW community. And I feel like a richer and more impactful person because of the relationships that I've developed as part of LGW, and because of the loving embrace of the LGW community has given me a lot more, I think, courage to really do what I think is right for the world. So thank you for that.
Great. Lisa, thank you. We've got a evaluation survey in the chat for people to fill out for this. Please fill it out, and please stay tuned for our upcoming talks with people. So appreciate it very much, Lisa. Thank you so much. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time with you. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.